Well, hello and welcome to Newscentre. Now, fugitive businessman Nirav Modi, who faces multiple charges in India for his alleged involvement in the Punjab National Bank scam, has lost his bid to appeal against his extradition order in UK's Supreme Court. Now, the development came after Indian authorities submitted their legal response to the application filed by the fugitive businessman seeking permission to appeal against the extradition order. Sanjay Suri now joins us from London. Sanjay, tell us, yet another setback for Nirav Modi. Does this pave the way for his extradition, or are we expecting more speed bumps on the way?
Well, a lot of speed bumps are waiting down the road, but this itself is not a major triumph. This was sort of as expected. Nirav Modi was expected to launch an appeal before the appeals court to have a permission then to appeal to the Supreme Court. And that permission, that certification has been refused. The Supreme Court in the UK does not work like the Supreme Court in India. It is not an appellate court for a High Court decision. The Supreme Court only considers matters that are of basic law and public importance. And the High Court said this is not such a matter and therefore refused leave to appeal. This now means that the legal course that Nirav Modi had sought to work in the extradition matter is now closed. There is no avenue left to him. There is a possibility he could go to the European Court of Human Rights. That is not likely to get him anywhere either. And on the extradition track, he's clearly lost out finally. The question there is whether he is going to be on his way back to India. Not certain at all, because he has applied for asylum. That is a parallel track, and that can block any physical extradition. We'll have to see how that one plays out.
Let me ask you a supplementary question, Sanjay. In terms of legal remedies available to Nirav Modi, we've seen in the Vijay Mallya case that he's undertaking some kind of secret proceedings that his lawyers are not familiar with, even the centre is not familiar with. Reports suggest they appear to be asylum proceedings. Tell us about the legal remedies available to Nirav Modi.
Well, the legal remedy is one that he has taken already, which is he has made the parallel move to seek asylum. And as we saw in the case of Vijay Mallya, as you point out, Vijay Mallya too lost the case, the extradition case, and he did so finally. He too was refused permission to appeal to the Supreme Court on similar grounds, but he is still here, and this has been a while. And Nirav Modi has also sought political asylum, and this is a huge lacuna in British law, where the extradition law can be worked and invoked by the Indian government, as it did, and then the Indian government has won in the case of Nirav Modi, and it won in the case of Vijay Mallya, but has not succeeded in securing physical extradition, because there is this inviting parallel track waiting and available to any fugitive to then undercut the whole extradition process. Vijay Mallya has used that successfully so far, and so has Nirav Modi tapped that route. So the other path is waiting. So that is the principal speed bump along the route that you were alluding to.
And one final question, Sanjay. Historically, we've seen that the establishment, especially the judiciary in the UK, chooses to err on the side of abundant caution, and that is with respect to human rights. They do not want to fall foul of any international standards. Can you give us a sense of what this historical precedent would mean for these future proceedings that are currently pending there for Vijay Mallya, for Nirav Modi?
Well, on the extradition matter, we have broken new ground here. The Indian government has certainly broken new ground here. The Indian government has never had the kind of success before that it had with Vijay Mallya, and then again with Nirav Modi. These are fugitives sought in India for very, very big financial frauds, and the Indian government has succeeded. And the human rights argument was one of the main arguments that was presented by both Vijay Mallya earlier and Nirav Modi now in court, saying that extradition would be a violation of their human rights, that they would not get a right to fair trial, that the detention conditions themselves would be inhuman. All these arguments were made, but on these occasions, the court upheld the Indian government's case. It accepted the Indian government's assurances that dedicated facilities have been set up, a Barrack 12 particularly in Arthur Road Jail in Mumbai, where the detention conditions would be acceptable, more than acceptable. They would be transparent, available for views and inspection. So the human rights argument was put to one side. But now it is not a matter only for the courts, because the government itself has provided another legal avenue for someone like Vijay Mallya and now Nirav Modi to work. And that is the path they're going down now and staying on for that reason.
Right. Thanks a lot for those updates coming in from London. As we're beginning to get a picture that this may not be perhaps the final word, that there may be many more speed bumps on the way. But let's move forward now. Thousands of Indians are at risk of being deported from the United States. That's because they're among over 2 lakh tech workers who have lost their jobs this year. CNBC-TV18's Kiran Khatri finds out more about how many of them are coping with the situation.
60 calendar days. That's the window that laid-off H-1B visa holders in the US have to find a new employer to sponsor their visa. Failure will mean they have to leave America. A large number of these are Indians whose green card applications are pending with US authorities.
We're looking at about 70 to 80K. Within that 70 to 80K, if you look at the average H-1B percentage within these companies, in tech companies, they're typically 5 to 15%. And that comes out to somewhere around 4 to 12K that are in the US on an H-1B affected by these layoffs. And because of the green card backlogs, most of those 4 to 12K are probably Indians on an H-1B employed in the US.
Some of these H-1B holders who shared their stories with CNBC-TV18 said the job hunt has been challenging, and not just because of the narrow window.
A lot of companies do not want to even interview candidates who are on H-1B. And then even those candidates, even those companies that want to interview, if you know it takes a while for the interview process to be completed, as some companies take like 2 weeks to just like have interview with the first round, and then they talk about other rounds. So this process by itself can take 4 to 6 weeks.
However, a US embassy spokesperson told CNBC-TV18, and I quote, "We continue to see high interest from US companies in employing Indian workers through the H-1B program," end of quote. Some companies which have had to lay off employees have been trying to help. A 27-year-old Indian who was laid off by real estate tech company Compass told CNBC-TV18 on the condition of anonymity, and I quote, "My company offered me a 2-month severance package. Instead of giving me a lump sum amount, they said they will keep me on the payroll for 2 months, even though I won't be an employee anymore. So my 60-day period began after that period ended," end of quote. Immigration lawyers say one option these visa holders can study is changing their H-1B visa to a visitor visa, which will give them 6 months to find a job and reapply for an H-1B visa. But the rules governing such changes are complex. A few also say it's time America reviewed these visa rules. They added that such rigid rules may prove detrimental to the US economy.
What America doesn't realize is that these people are sick of unwelcoming US immigration policies that are so old and need to be changed. It's going to impact American economics, because the brain drain that America attracted the best and the brightest from all over the world and stayed at the forefront of innovation in the world, that's no longer going to apply anymore when people don't want to come here.
But no one is holding their breath, because petitions in the past to increase the window to 180 days have not had much success. Many H-1B visa holders are now bracing for the eventuality of returning to India. But again, there is no guarantee they will find a job. According to the Naukri JobSpeak Index report, IT sector hiring was down by 18% year-on-year in October. Even India's startup ecosystem may not be a viable option. From Byju's to Unacademy to Oyo, Indian tech startups have also been handing out pink slips. In Mumbai with Kiran Khatri, Arundhati Ramanan.
The union government has told Parliament that the controlled samples of 4 cough syrups that allegedly led to the death of 66 children in Gambia were found to be of standard quality. Bhagwant Khuba, Union Minister of State for Chemical and Fertilizer, in a written reply in Rajya Sabha said that as per the report of the government, the samples have been declared to be of standard quality. The said samples were also found to be negative for both diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol. On the 5th of October, the World Health Organization had issued a medical product alert for 4 contaminated cough syrups that could have caused an acute kidney injuries and deaths among children in Gambia. The WHO investigators had found unacceptable levels of diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol in the samples of the medicine, which can be toxic. The Haryana drug regulator had halted production at the Maiden Pharma after the WHO alert. The order from the regulator said, and I quote, "During the investigations, as per Drugs and Cosmetics Act and rules thereunder, it is observed that the firm has been manufacturing and testing drugs without adhering and in contravention of the various GMP requirements of Schedule M and Schedule U of the drug rules. The firm has not maintained and not produced complete records of manufacturing and testing as per rules." End of quote. In other news, the group of ministers are yet to find a consensus on imposing GST on online gaming. The GOM has left it out for the GST Council to take a final decision. Timsy Jaipuria is joining us now with more details. Timsy.
Well, as we know, this was a really tricky situation for the GOM. And as per the final recommendations that have been submitted by the GOM on online gaming and casinos and bid courses, well, here are the details that what exactly the report has. They say that no consensus could be reached whether the activities of online gaming, horse racing and casinos should be taxed at 28% on the full face value of bets or on the GGR. And the GOM has now left it open for the GST Council to take a final call. But yes, when it comes to online gaming, because that was something which was actually delaying the entire process, the GOM, the divergent views that have been presented, that includes where Goa has expressed that the contribution towards price pool may be treated as supply and not something on which GST should be levied. Then West Bengal and UP felt that activities of online gaming may be taxed as supply of actionable claims as betting and gambling, irrespective of the fact that whether it's a game of chance or a game of skill. Similarly, Tamil Nadu has actually said that if horse racing and online gaming are a game of skill and not actionable claims of betting and gambling, then taxing should be adopted at GGR at 28%. So broad agreement that sex supplies may be taxed at the 28%, that is at the high level, was trying to be a conclusion, but yes, finally that conclusion could not be emerged amongst the GOM members and it failed, whereas no consensus could be reached as Goa has also suggested that platform fees or service charge may be taxed at existing rate of 18% separately as compared when it comes to, say, casinos where there is an element of service, where there's an entertainment fees, etc. There are restaurant charges and restaurant services, etc. So they should be charged at 28%, and the betting amount should be charged at a different rate. So even that could not be on a, as we say, even GOM members could not reach on a conclusion on that side. On valuation, the GOM again could not reach a consensus apart from the tax rate. Why?
Sure.
Because very clearly UP and West Bengal were of a view that the said activities may be taxed at the full amount, which includes the full face value of bets on online games. Similarly, Gujarat and Goa expressed the view that the same may be taxed, that is, the valuation could be considered tax on the platform fees, etc. So all divergent views are mentioned in the GOM report.
Sure.
There could not be any consensus, be it on valuation or on the tax rate. Let's see what finally GST Council decides when it meets on Saturday.
Sure, Timsy. Sure, Timsy. Thanks a lot for those updates. Let's move ahead now. It's time now to slip into a very short break, but coming up next, an exclusive conversation with Mark Hoplamazian, President and CEO of Hyatt Hotels, on the other side. Welcome back. Now, global hospitality chain Hyatt Hotels says it is seeing pent-up demand, which is being driven by leisure travel. Earlier today, I spoke exclusively to Mark Hoplamazian, President and CEO of Hyatt Hotels Corporation. He said that leisure travel has exceeded pre-pandemic levels, while business travel is at 85 to 90% of pre-pandemic levels. Highlighting the headwinds, Mark said that high interest rates and remote working is taking a toll on the hospitality sector. He further said that India's G20 presidency is a big opportunity for the hospitality space.
Leisure travel was clearly significantly higher than it was pre-pandemic, 20 to 30% higher.
Okay.
Group travel, that is corporate meetings, is approaching somewhere between 85 and 100%, depends on what market around the world you're in.
Sure.
And finally, individual business travel is sort of in and around 80% recovered. It's varied over time, but subsequent to, in the United States, subsequent to the Labor Day weekend, which was the beginning of September, we saw steady increases in business travel.
Sure.
We're seeing it in India.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it is recovering. I think some of the issue is in trying to track individual business travel versus what we would refer to as group business travel, which is a block of 10 rooms or more. Some companies are changing how people are traveling. More teams are traveling together. So the actual total commercial travel that's business driven, I think is approaching 100% recovered and will actually exceed pre-pandemic levels sometime in 2023.
Okay.
Whether the dividing lines are relevant and you can still compare on the same basis to pre-pandemic and 2023 levels, I think is less clear. Because some companies have just shifted the way in which they are using travel and hotel stays relative to pre-pandemic. So the use cases have changed.
Okay.
And really the question is corporate demand coming back? And the answer is yes, unambiguously.
Sure. Then let me ask you another question that when we talk about travel going forward, we had Reed Hastings of Netflix mention a while back that the biggest competition for Netflix happens to be people going to sleep. He wants people to stay awake and watch Netflix. Similarly, we had Mercedes India, their management here, and when they were here, they said that when we talk about people buying cars, people buying Mercedes, their biggest competition is people actually investing their savings in mutual funds. So SIPs was their biggest concern. Looking ahead at 2023, what, according to you, is the biggest challenge, biggest concern facing Hyatt?
Wow. I think the demand picture is fantastic. Supply of new hotels has been slowed down significantly.
Sure.
And that's pretty much true globally.
Okay.
In the United States, that's been partly the result of some challenges in raising capital. In China, serial lockdowns have really created disruption on work sites. In India, I think it's a combination of both of those things. But new supply of hotels has actually been more muted. Now, this means that with rising demand and more limited supply, you're going to see continued strength in hospitality, which I believe is going to be true. But I would say as we now move into a time when more people are going to be traveling more freely because travel restrictions have come off, proof of whatever your COVID status is has largely fallen away, international schedules for airlines are starting to increase. So all of that is a positive sign, but we're going to have more limited new hotel supply. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest things that we need to figure out as we move forward.
What about work from home, hybrid working, virtual meetings? Is that not a concern for you?
It is. It creates some more limitations on people traveling on individual business trips, but also creates more need for companies to convene and have people get together. So I would say it's unclear to me how significant of an impact that's going to have. Of course, there is some negative impact if you don't have people in the office all the time, because a lot of times if you were going to go see someone for a business trip to Bangalore and they're not in their offices, there's no purpose to the trip.
Correct.
Because there's no place to go for the meeting. So instead, what do? You get on Zoom or something else. However, companies realize that if that persists, they need to actually maintain the culture and keep people connected. So they're going to have more meetings. So I think net, there will probably be some impact, but I think overall, not significant.
Let's talk about India now. When you talk about India, when you look at the Indian market, can you tell us about what your plans are in terms of investments, in terms of your targets here for the Indian market? Hyatt already has a huge presence, a huge footprint here. If you can give us to a sense of the number of rooms that are already here, and what would you be targeting over the next couple of years?
Yeah, so we have over 40 hotels today, and we're going to be opening, we opened 8 or 9 new hotels just this year.
Okay.
One of our most active years. Next year will be even better. I think we're opening 10 hotels next year. So this is actually sort of the golden age of openings of properties. Some of them are conversions, some of them are newly built, which is great, but this is after a very long time of very limited growth.
Okay.
So I would say that we're very excited about this because our focus has always been to serve markets where our guests want to travel. So of course that means you have to focus on the major cities. We want to grow across our brand portfolio in all the major cities, but we also want to cover more destinations. And the thing is, I happen to love India, and I love being here. The people, the culture, and the cuisine. I'm sorry, but I absolutely love the cuisine. And the diversity of all of those things is amazing. There's so little that's been actually tapped yet. There's so many magnificent locations and destinations that are underserved. Okay. And so I think our future plans, first we want to grow out our brand portfolio in major cities, but then subsequently to find more destination, leisure opportunities, well-being, destination resorts that I think will really showcase the magnificence of India and the diversity of the geographies that we have here and the cuisine and the cultures.
So India is known to be a very competitive market when it comes to hospitality.
Yes.
So give us a sense of what this Hyatt strategy will be going forward. Are you looking firmly at organic growth or are you also looking at interesting opportunities that may perhaps present room for inorganic growth in terms of tie-ups, partnerships or takeovers?
I would say our focus is going to be primarily on organic growth. Okay. We have a very broad brand portfolio. Not all of our hotels, all of our brands rather, are represented in India yet, but they will be. But we're opening some hotels this coming year. We have a brand called JDV by Hyatt, which is very boutique, lifestyle-oriented hotels. Okay. We have another brand called the Unbound Collection, and both of those will be new introductions this coming year. The Unbound Collection Hotel is a palace in Bhopal. Oh, wow. So Nur Us Sabah is the name of the palace. Very excited about that. That actually will open the following year, but we're beginning the works on that. Okay. So we have a lot more room to grow just organically. Tie-ups are interesting because I think one of the things that we are focusing on is well-being, and also how that ties into cuisine and how you're eating more healthfully and looking after your holistic well-being. Okay. So I think we have more opportunities to bring more well-being practices into our programming globally, but also in India. And food and beverage has been one of our core strengths, and we're continuing to double down on that effort too. Okay. And so if there are interesting partnerships that come along in those areas, we would go towards them for sure.
Fair enough. Let's also talk about one of the key triggers for the Indian market going forward. India is hosting the G20 presidency. That is something that the government is very bullish on. The government, in fact, is hosting very many delegations and conferences across 50 cities. So give us a sense, is that an opportunity trigger for you? And if yes, are you looking at perhaps banking on this in the form of perhaps ties up with the government or in terms of hosting the wide population of delegates, scholars, corporates, etc., who will be traveling?
Yes, no question. I think the G20 is going to be a big boom for India. In fact, as we speak, there's a group of delegates that are in their first planning session in the Grand Hyatt in Mumbai right now. So, I think that this is going to be something like over 250 meetings and gatherings over the course of the coming year. Sure. Which is, as you pointed out, across many different markets. So I think this is going to provide a tremendous level of exposure for India, and yes, it will be good for our business, and we have every expectation of being fully participating in that as much as possible. But that's not where it ends. The World Cup, the Cricket World Cup is here in 24, and there are going to be other things that are going to be big demand drivers on a global basis. So I see more and more opportunities like that to really build a growing base of demand.
Well, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Newscentre. News and updates continue right here on CNBC-TV18. Stay tuned.